They say history remembers kings, generals, and revolutions. But sometimes, the most powerful man in Europe never wore a crown, never led an army, never conquered a nation. He conquered something far more valuable: information. And he did it from behind a cramped desk in a narrow Frankfurt alleyway. A place the world dismissed, mocked, and ignored. A place no emperor would dare to step into, yet every emperor would eventually depend on. His name was Mayer Amschel Rothschild, born in 1744 with nothing. No land, no title. No privilege, just a mind sharp enough to turn the rules of old Europe into his personal playbook. And a world arrogant enough to underestimate him. What follows is not a fairy tale. It's the story of how one man built an empire that outlived monarchies, survived wars, and reshaped global finance, before the word finance even existed. And the institutions around him? They didn't applaud him, they feared him. Because when you rise this fast, this silently, this intelligently, the world doesn't call you a businessman. It calls you a threat. Mayer Amschel Rothschild was born on February 23, 1744, in Frankfurt's Judengasse, the Jewish ghetto. The street was locked at night. Curfews enforced, walls stood high. Poverty was normal. Rights were limited. The world outside treated the people inside as shadows, tolerated only when convenient. But Mayer wasn't looking at the walls. He was looking at the cracks. His father, Amschel Moses Rothschild, ran a small coin shop, barely enough to support a family of 10 children. But that dusty little shop had something priceless: a collection of ancient coins and medallions that occasionally caught the eye of wealthy patrons. Mayer watched every interaction, every negotiation, every hesitation in a nobleman's voice. He didn't see coins, he saw psychology. And he realized something early. When the rich want something rare, logic evaporates. Scarcity speaks louder than bloodlines. At age 12, he lost both parents to smallpox. At age 13, he was sent away to study the banking trade in Hanover. At 19, he returned to Judengasse with nothing but experience and a mind trained to read people like ledgers. He began selling rare coins to the aristocracy. Not just selling, orchestrating desire, creating demand where none existed. He wrote letters to collectors describing coins as if they were relics of lost worlds. He learned everything about their histories so he could sell not a product, but a story. And nobles love stories more than investments. This is how he caught the eye of someone whose interest would change everything. Crown Prince Wilhelm of Hesse-Kassel, one of the richest men in all of Europe. Wilhelm wanted rare coins, Mayer wanted access. They struck a relationship built on trust, discretion, and something far more dangerous: dependence. By 1769, Mayer received official permission to call himself court agent, a title nearly impossible for a Jew at the time. It gave him legal clearance to do business with princes, generals, and ministers. But titles weren't enough. He was playing a bigger game, so he moved in silence. He expanded from coins to commerce, from commerce to credit, from credit to government finance. And every step he took with caution, because Europe wasn't designed for men like him to rise. Each success came with a shadow, with a tension, with the kind of whispers that could crush a man before he had a chance to defend himself. But Mayer had one advantage no one else had. He understood that information moves faster than gold. In the late 1700s, war funded nearly everything. Armies needed loans, kingdoms needed cash, soldiers needed salaries. And when nations go to war, banks become stronger than thrones, because kings can command armies, but they can't command money that isn't there. Mayer saw the opportunity long before anyone else. He began financing both sides of conflicts, quietly, strategically, always maintaining a neutral position while earning interest from every direction. Was it risky? Of course. But those who play safe never play history. Yet here's the twist. He wasn't playing to become rich. He was playing to build a dynasty. Something that would outlive him. Something permanent. While every other merchant chased profits, Mayer built systems. He trained his sons personally. He taught them languages, diplomacy, negotiation, accounting, and, most importantly, secrecy. He drilled a single rule into their minds: trust no one outside the family. Not partners, not politicians, not kings. Family was the fortress. By the time Napoleon began slicing through Europe, nations were desperate for funds. Currencies collapsed, governments defaulted. The continent was a chessboard where every piece was on fire. This chaos was Mayer's opening. He placed his 5 sons in the most powerful financial hubs in Europe: Amschel in Frankfurt, Salomon in Vienna, Nathan in London, Karl in Naples, James in Paris. 5 brothers, 5 capitals. One network. But this wasn't a family tree. It was a communication machine. While royal couriers traveled on horseback, while generals waited weeks for updates, while kings made decisions in the dark, the Rothschilds were sending information in hours. They had their own riders, their own codes, their own intelligence network operating faster than governments. And information, once again, beat gold. Nathan Mayer Rothschild, Mayer's most aggressive son, became the central engine of the empire. When Napoleon escaped from Elba in 1815, every market in Europe panicked. War was coming again. Nathan wasn't afraid, he was excited. Because he understood the same truth his father had mastered. When the world is uncertain, the man who knows first wins. Nathan had riders stationed across Europe. Their orders were simple. Get information. Get it first. Get it directly to London. This is how, according to reputable historians, not conspiracies, the Rothschilds received early notice of Wellington's victory at Waterloo, giving them an advantage in the bond market. Not because they manipulated governments, not because they controlled nations, but because they were simply faster. Faster than kings, faster than armies, faster than empires. The Rothschild advantage wasn't power, it was precision, and Europe hated them for it. As their wealth grew, so did their influence. And influence is a currency that makes enemies. Governments needed them, but never trusted them. The public feared them, but couldn't ignore them. Aristocrats respected them, but resented their rise. Because the Rothschilds represented something Europe couldn't comprehend. A new type of power. One not inherited, not granted, not blessed by bloodline, but built. Built in silence, built through strategy, built through a network no army could conquer. By the time Mayer died in 1812, he left behind not a fortune, but an architecture. A banking dynasty spanning Europe, the blueprint for international finance. He didn't build an empire by force. He built it by mastering the rules everyone else refused to learn. And that's why the world never fully embraced him. Because nothing terrifies institutions more than a man who succeeds without their permission. Today, the Rothschild name is wrapped in myth, misunderstanding, exaggeration, and wild fantasy. Not because of what Mayer did, but because he did it so well the world couldn't process it. A man born in a locked ghetto became the architect of a financial network that would shape Europe for a century. A man with no title became the advisor of kings. A man with no army outmaneuvered empires. A man with no privilege used intelligence as a weapon. And that is why his story still feels forbidden. Not because it is dark, but because it proves something uncomfortable. Sometimes the world's most powerful force isn't a king. It isn't a general. It isn't a revolution. Sometimes it's a mind that refuses to stay small. Mayer Amschel Rothschild didn't just build a dynasty. He built a warning. A reminder that power doesn't care where you were born, only how far you're willing to go. And he went further than anyone.